Well, hi everyone, it's Andre Alfonso here. First of all, thank you so much for coming along to our breakfast briefing on the 10th of April at the RAC Club. Feedback from you has been fantastic, and one of the things a lot of you have asked for is access to the content because you felt it was very valuable. So we thought we'd put together this brief video, which covers all of the things we talked about yesterday, but just try and do it really quickly. We shared with you the four truths based on all of the experience that we've had over the last 30 years, both organizationally and individually. First truth we shared with you is that salespeople, sales-facing professionals spend 30% of their time face-to-face with the customer. 70% of their time is stuff the customer doesn't see. And the point we're trying to make here is the moments that matter. The time you have the biggest impact on your customer is when you are face-to-face with them. Second thing we shared with you, the second truth, was every salesperson needs to be competent in using a sales process when they are face-to-face with a customer. It could be a consultative process, a bit like the one that's shown over here, where we know how to open the meeting, how we ask questions to understand their needs, how do we then come up with the solutions that we can pitch, how do we resolve objections and close the deal. We also know it is not enough. The third thing we shared with you, the third truth, was that you can turbocharge the sales process by building trust. And we know it can take months and years to build trust. As salespeople, we can't afford to wait months and years. We've got to be a lot more intentional about it. And we need to know what elements we need to focus on to be that intentional and build trust quickly. We shared with you our trust equation, which breaks it down into some very simple elements. First of all, we increase our credibility by demonstrating our character and competence. We increase our intimacy by having a really good emotional understanding of our customers and their problems and their aspirations and their challenges and their frustrations. And we reduce risk by reducing uncertainty. We talked about risk not being danger, but just a customer not knowing what the future holds, and how we can reduce that risk by just giving clarity of what the future might be. We then shared with you that storytelling is a very effective tool in building trust and also influence. And we know from all of the experience that we've had is salespeople do not leverage the power of storytelling. We often get confused with what storytelling is and isn't. Sometimes we think a pitch is a story, or a case study is a story, or the marketing narrative, or the organizational narrative. Well, at Ariel, we have been working with stories for 25 years. We come from that place of theater where we understand how to tell a story. And storytelling has some very key elements, which we shared with you. It's got to have a time and place, a character who has a goal but experiences an obstacle, and then an event happens, a dramatic event that changes something, which leads to resolution and learning. And we talked about how that is critical in being able to tell a story. We then shared with you 6 reasons salespeople must develop the skill of storytelling, and we shared the evidence behind it, not just behind our assertions, because we felt it was important. And the first thing we shared with you is that the huge strides in neuroscience and brain imaging technology means that now we can look inside the brain and see what's actually happening. So when our brain receives facts, a couple of areas of our brain light up under a functional MRI. But our brain receiving stories, many parts of our brain actually light up, as you can see from that diagram over here. We also can see that decision making is often made at a subconscious level, at an emotional level. And sometimes the decisions are very irrational. And what we tend to do is, once the decisions are made, is we wash over rationality and logic at the front part of our brain. And the point we're trying to make here is stories. Stories speak to the emotional part. Stories speak to the part of the brain where decisions are actually made. And isn't that where we want to be operating? The second bit of evidence we shared with you is that stories build strong relationships. And we looked at some data about the amount of trust you have in people you don't know, and versus the trust you have in people you do know. And we had that experiment where you shared some of your childhood challenges, and we saw very, very graphically in the room how trust increased within 60 to 90 seconds with you sharing a story about yourself or a challenge you had. So the point we're trying to make here is a story is the shortest distance between being a stranger and a friend. And what we are, and we all know that in sales, we are in the process of building relationships. So we need to look at how we use stories to do that. The third piece of evidence we shared with you was from Stanford, where we talked about, when people were sharing details about crime and they're using stories and using statistics, when they were asked to recall what they remembered, 63% said they had remembered stories, details, but only 5% recalled any statistic. And I guess the point we're trying to make here is stories make it easier for your customer to remember you, your ideas, and your product. And isn't that what we want? We want our customers to remember us after we leave their office, after we leave their building. As you're reading this, I'm sure, and thinking about what we talked about at the breakfast briefing, probably the things top of mind for you are likely to be the stories. It could be the one of me falling off the stage. It could be the U2 story. And most probably it's the story that you shared with that person that you didn't know very well about a childhood challenge. We tend to hang on to those stories and remember that, and it makes it easier for us to recall stories. The fourth bit of evidence we shared with you was your customers want more stories from you. I shared with you some research from the Forrester Group, which actually said that senior level buyers found that a lot of their salespeople didn't engage them with stories. And the sort of stories your customers want to hear, we've shown over here, it's a personal story about who you are, a client story about how you've helped someone else in the past, a product story that makes your product come to life, and an organizational story, which is all about what makes you different from your competitors. The fifth bit of evidence we shared with you was the experiment we did in the room, first of all, which was around the triangles, the circle, and the box, and we got you to express what you saw happening with those images. We also shared with you, the movies like Finding Nemo and Up and Toy Story 3, and how these fictional characters, computer-generated characters, touched us emotionally in various scenes. And the point we're trying to make here is that we seek meaning, and stories create meaning for us. Great salespeople use stories to create this emotional meaning, not just providing information. For years we've been taught features and benefits, and how often do we show up in clients and unload statistics and product information? Forget it. Think about how you can incorporate stories into those interactions to create that emotional connection and underline and bold emotional meaning. The last bit of evidence we shared with you was the fantastic eBay experiment, where they're taking everyday items which cost very little and attaching a story to them and then putting them on eBay, even though people knew they were fictional stories, put the price of these products right up. And the point we're trying to make is stories actually increase the perceived value of the product you are selling. We then talked about story tending, or listening to your customers when your customer shares one of their stories with you, and how important that is for you to do that. It's the other side of the equation to telling a story. It's actually receiving a story. We shared the Mandarin symbol of listening, which is Ting, which says very clearly there's 5 elements that when we listen to people, not only do we listen with our ears, but we always also listen with our eyes, with our heart. We pay undivided attention by being 100% present in the moment, and we treat our customer like royalty. We then shared with you the flawed assumption. And the flawed assumption is essentially saying that, since the 80s, when we started to look deeply into the process of selling, the predominant model that has dominated our sales approach has been a logical model. The idea was that, 20% of salespeople brought in 80% of the business. And we looked at normalizing that by training salespeople on skills like asking questions, dealing with features and benefits, and dealing with objections and so on and so forth, but all done in a very logical fashion. Here's the thing, we now know that the logical model isn't enough. You need to understand the process, but the way customers buy is is more than just the logical model that we have been trained for. And what we're saying, and our big point of view, is that storytelling is the connection point. It's taking it to that next level. It is putting that veneer over everything we know now to take your sales capability and your impact to the next. And when we talk about storytelling, we're not just talking about just having a whole bunch of stories and a whole bunch of words that show up into a story. Our point of view at Ariel is it's how you tell the story that engages the other person, the customer. Because we use a combination of our 25 years of experience in presence, personal presence, executive presence, sales presence, and marry that with storytelling. And that creates the magic where people can jump out of themselves and tell amazing stories that totally engage the other person. And our whole view was that, there's two different types of stories. The strategic storytelling, which is much like the conductor on the left-hand side over there, which is very specific purpose and a situation in mind. And yeah, we all have strategic stories that we might want to share, but we've also got to get the skill of agile storytelling, which is a bit like the jazz band, which is organic and spontaneous and reacting to what's happening around us. And that's agile storytelling. Salespeople need to have both. That's what we teach, and hence we are inviting you to our one day on the 23rd of May to experience what it is we do, our one-day storytelling for salespeople. Get in touch with us. Here is our details, and really encourage you to share this video with as many people as you want. Our purpose here is to get storytelling for salespeople on the map, and we will do whatever we can do with your help to make sure more people get to know about our point of view and come to us so we can help you. Thank you for your time.